A year ago, the whole world seemed to come to a stop when our son was diagnosed with autism. As you can imagine, being a parent with a nonverbal child is difficult, and learning to communicate is you have to be creative. We're still new in this journey, and we learn the new things about our son every day. A favorite quote that I have found so far is, if you've met one individual with autism, you've met one individual with autism. They're all unique, and so are their communication styles, and it's important that we learn more about them. Autism spectrum disorder has significant impacts on communication. Today we'll talk a little bit about the different styles of communication used by those with autism and how we can better educate ourselves to communicate more effectively. There are three main different categories with children with autism use: unconventional use of language, nonverbal communication, and undesirable behaviors. Many children with autism will communicate in unusual ways. One of these examples is called echolalia, in which the child will repeat words or phrases that they've heard from TV, YouTube, music, or even other parents or adults talking. They also like to use made-up words, or they can say the same thing over and over. My son's favorite word to use is no. They also like to confuse their pronouns and will call themselves you instead of I. This is typical for them. One of the other big ones is nonverbal communication. This is a big one for children with autism because they don't like to make eye contact and it makes them uncomfortable. Another example of things that they'll do for nonverbal is they will look at the person they want to grab something and then look at the object. Or my son will go to the refrigerator and grab his gallon of milk in his cup versus just saying, I'm thirsty and I'd like a drink. Also, they will go to things and just point at them versus just saying, like, can you grab me a candy bar or can you grab me something to eat? Another category that falls for children with autism is undesirable behaviors. This is a big one seen with children with autism because it usually stems from communication. Since they are unable to tell you what's bothering them, the behavior is their way of reacting. So usually there's tantrums, self-harming is another one, or aggression are typically seen because they can't verbally tell you what's wrong. So the biggest way to get the behavior to stop is to try and remove the stimulus that's overstimulating them if you can figure it out. This is also a difficult task because sometimes it's not always easy to understand. According to the Australian parenting website, children with autism develop communication styles one at a time versus all at once with typical children. This is a big thing with children and autism because learning things one at a time is huge for them because trying to do too many things at once can cause a sensory overload and those undesirable behaviors. Now that we understand a little bit more about the communication styles, we can learn how to communicate better with them and better educate ourselves on how to cause less frustration for them. One of the big things with communicating with children for autism is to take things slow. Keep it simple. Use short sentences and things like, do you want to go versus do you want to go for a ride? Saying things with lots of emphasis, so saying, no, we don't touch that because it's very hot, or oh, you're acting so very silly. Another thing that's big for children with autism is using simple one-word phrases. So asking for cereal is great because then they can simply answer yes or no, or they can shake their head yes or no. One of the main things that we need to learn when communicating with children with autism is patience. Take things very slow, one at a time, and give your child a chance to respond. We know that communication is hard, so if you expect an answer right away, they're going to get frustrated and it will cause behaviors, or they just simply won't answer. Taking things slow and one idea at a time is big for them. According to Tatum D., author of Can the World Afford Autism Spectrum Disorder, communication doesn't always have to be verbal. It can be things like acts, events, or even signs. This is a big one with my son, is for him to say hello, he'll raise his eyebrows at you versus just coming up to you and saying hello. In this speech, I talked about how autism affects communication skills and how we can better educate ourselves to effectively communicate with them. One of the biggest things to remember is that children with autism are just that. Children just like yours, or they can be adults too, just like you or I. It's important to remember that just because their communication is nonverbal doesn't mean they're not communicating. They're just communicating in a different way. If we can be flexible in our daily lives and learn how to adjust, we can learn how to adjust our communications with them as well, and it makes a big difference in their world and it can make things go so much smoother.